and welcome for coming here and participating in this meeting that we decided we'd hold, Carmen and I. I want to thank every one of you for being here. I think it's very important. The numbers are higher than I anticipated. So we're off to a good start. I'd also want to thank the school and Mike Peters from his program, the rec program, and of course every one of you. So what we're going to discuss and what we're going to talk about today is our current issue with the, I call it illegal dumping. We could probably come up with all kinds of names, but for now I'm calling it illegal dumping because it's people taking stuff that should be going into the waste cycle and disposing of it outside the given cycle. By that cycle I mean the dump or recycling depots or any of those facilities that exist today, and choose to place these items outside the cycle, usually on the side of a river, down a little forestry road where nobody can see them, tucked away in little hidden areas. And that alone makes this tough to apprehend and stop. So we'll go into more detail on the objectives and some of the pros and cons and how tough this effort can be, but how we can try to at least be educated and start the moves, the baby steps forward to curtailing this a little bit. For me would be great. 100% I don't think is achievable at this point in time, but this is the start and we're going to get there. So, very important factors of illegal dumping that I've identified, and I'm sure there's many more here, but I took some of the most important points of what illegal dumping impacts. When you see these, I'm sure every one of you already has that recognition of what an illegal dump site can impact. I think it's what you'd call a no-brainer, but I think I want to bring it up to even you people, and then of course at large. I think sometimes maybe they're overlooked. And I kind of put them in what I consider a hierarchy, but there is none. It's whatever you think, but I think the first one that's most important for all of us to realize when somebody does not follow the right garbage waste plan or cycle, it impacts human health and safety. Examples of human health and safety would be very simple. Right now, another thing I want to point out is every photograph you're going to be looking at here, none of these were chopped out of Google or YouTube. These are our backyard. This is what it looks like out here. And it hurts a little bit sometimes because if you look on this photo right here, there's way in the back there, there's about 3-4 vehicles back there, and it's full of children. There's mums with their little ones. There's little bikes, dads hanging out, little fires, and this is all behind me and in amongst them. And it's really tough, I think, for someone to come here and recreate when they have to kind of position themselves in such a manner where they see a nice mountain, a clean piece of beach, but on all peripherals and to the back, it's this. So it's really poor. So how that affects human and health safety in many ways. The chemicals that are found in most of the plastics and some of the garbage that's thrown out there are toxic once they degrade. They go into our water systems. And we're at a point now where it's almost every nook and cranny there's garbage. So there could be impact to our groundwater systems because we don't know what this stuff is. A lot of it is controlled substances because there's some things that are, for example, used to make drugs. We all know meth, right? The byproducts of that are also thrown out in our environment. Probably, well, I'm going to say 99% of it. Because those types don't really go to the dump. It jeopardizes their businesses. So it ends up in our environment and it pollutes. Another way that this stuff is harmful to human health is children are playing People are out and about. Sharp objects. They're all over. Metal that's breaking down and rusting, leaving huge pieces of garbage where the children, they don't know what, they're young, they have stuff in their mouth or whatever. You have to be constantly watching. I know they put a bit of dirt, maybe a stick or so. That's not an issue. But when you're running into a lot of contaminants, be it plastics or liquids, paint for instance, car batteries, all this stuff, all this lead breaking down and going into our system, it takes a long time to decompose and actually go back to a natural substance. Of course, our fish and wildlife are endangered by this stuff, and they're heavily impacted because it's put out into their backyard. Of course, as we know, bears will chew on absolutely anything foreign to them. And also, there's a lot of smelly residues in there that they don't mind chewing on. And to get to a small chocolate bar wrapper, there may be other items in there that will cause them some difficulties. Antifreeze, very sweet substance, and an animal would drink it up and then pretty much die or have a hard time. A lot of our bears are pretty, got quite the digestive systems. They can handle a bit, but they can't handle it for the rest of their life. Of course, the fish habitat. This is found in streams. In many cases, we find these things adjacent to watersheds, which also then feed back to humans. But there's valuable fish habitat that's being covered and being destroyed by this garbage. Even though we go and pick it up, they put it back. They keep putting it back, keep putting it back, and then there's always the residuals. And some, of course, as we know, toxic substances are going into the system. They don't break down, and there's effects there. It may be small here and there, but if you start calculating it like I have been, and I've been putting pinpoints on all the little dump sites, and I've rated these based on these points, and I'm starting to notice that my ratings, I haven't found a dump site that has zero impact. There's one or two I have found. They were on a concrete slab in the middle of a parking lot. Okay, not so bad. Not too much stuff's going to get impacted there. But on the majority of them, they were out in the bush, in our nature. Habitat ecosystem health, of course, that ties back into the fish and wildlife and ourselves. It's just another part of the whole cycle. As it deteriorates, gets through the soils, and then the plant vegetation that cannot grow there anymore will then be most likely an invasive species will take over that can live in these types of areas after prolonged periods of time, compaction, pollution. You'll start to end up with plant species that are hardy enough to live in those situations, but in most cases are not indigenous species. So you've displaced a minor part of the ecosystem in that little contaminated area. Of course, all this stuff here that we're looking at here, the Fraser River comes up and eats it all up and flushes it down. Of course, it's going downstream. So the impact is also not only here on this ecosystem and this fish and wildlife, but also on our humans. It's now going from here to Abbotsford. Then Abbotsford gets it, and then it flows down into the mouth of the Fraser River and out to the ocean. There it continues to have an impact no matter what. So it's in our yard, and of course Abbotsford has its issues also. I'm not just picking on Chilliwack. We're working here. We're also working in Abbotsford. We've chosen some jurisdictional boundaries so that we can actually function in and operate in. I'd love to be able to run a program like this throughout the whole the basin, Fraser Valley, but I'm a little limited. So to be effective, I've chosen to start at the top. There's more above us here, I'm hoping that, but which I'll talk about in a minute. Tourism, of course. I don't think there's too many tourists that come. Well, they come here with a beautiful picture in mind. And the tourism could be from just Alberta, Ontario, Japan, and of course the world out there. And they come here and think Canada, mountains, it's such a beautiful place. They get off the airport, and they may take a stop here. And I'll tell you, it's going to be quick. Once they go out to the mighty Fraser, and it's like, oh, yeah, this place is ugly. This is gross, right? So back out of here, let's go. And next thing you know, we're going to Williams Lake. We're going to go see the real north where it's beautiful and it's pristine and it's still left intact. So let's bypass all that stuff down there. It has bad impact because the reason that I figure people want to come to BC is for the mountains, the fresh air, the animals, the beauty of what we have to offer. And right now, I think that's one of the primary reasons, and some skiing and all that kind of stuff too, right? But you take that away. And we also, what we have to offer here as tourism is in the valley, our winters are mild. They're a bit wet, but they're mild. And that really appeals to a lot of people, to be able to go somewhere and call their friend and say, I'm in a t-shirt, it's February, it's March, look at me, you know, and that's what we have here, so we lock that market in, but if they go out beyond and try to experience some type of wilderness, they're greeted with a bit of garbage, illegal dumping. And of course, in the long run, each one of these then ties into our economy because we pay to fix these issues. We pay to remove this garbage to try to keep our tourism here. We pay to clean up, to allow our children to play in these areas, and our fishermen to feel like they're in what they can consider a pristine environment, and our tourists to be happy, and to try to mitigate the impacts to our ecosystem. Every one of those ties to somebody has to pay for this. And who is it right now? Well, it's coming, a large portion of this is coming out of our taxpayers' pockets. And it's a burden because, for example, I have one little site where the GVRD, or Greater Vancouver Regional District, has been cleaning up for years. So they have these really great records of this one problem area. It's tiny. The site is no bigger than, well, that little area where Braden is sitting and that chair, no, not much bigger than that. Well, it's always being dumped on, and dumped on. So they gave me some numbers, and it's costing them it's $20,000 a year to clean up that little spot. It's couchy, it's TVs, things like mattresses. Those are a great thing to toss out. Paint cans, and then some hazardous waste that they have to then pay a little bit more money to get it to the right place because they're going to do it right. They got to send a crew. They got to go with a flat deck. Sometimes they had to use a crane because the big mattress and bed was now in the creek beside the dump hole because there was no more room to keep putting the stuff on there. And it's and the worst thing is it's in an ecological reserve. The sign's there saying pristine environment. This is an area for frogs and ducks. You know, please stay on the trail. Don't disturb anything. And there's this little mountain of garbage that's costing $20,000 a year to clean up. So, who are we? Well, and what can we do? And what is our mandate? Well, the Conservation Officer Service works for the province, works for you. We are that portion of the taxpayers that are responsible for the enforcement and the protection of our environment. Pretty simple that way. We do a lot of other things, but everything we do links back to our environment, keeping it healthy, keeping it. Our primary mandate, of course, is public safety, human safety. But where we fall into that is, for example, you've got that bear that won't leave you alone in your backyard every day, who's become habituated. That's a public safety concern. We'll usually come around and figure out how we can manage that issue. Fishermen continuously taking away from the resources, impacting a salmon or steelhead species negatively. Well, we'll put some effort into trying to control that issue through licensing or whatever it is, operation. That has some ties to public safety, but our own health and safety also is the way our environment is still maintaining itself. Because it has, like I said earlier, it has that link back to us in all different facets. It's a network. It's a cycle we all know the importance of having greenery. We know the